Welcome. For 2026, global stability is being tested by a really complex web of interconnected threats. This briefing is designed to give you a clear-eyed assessment of those critical risks and, just as importantly, the analytical frameworks you need to navigate them. We're going to focus on the fault lines that could seriously disrupt both economic and political harmony.
So let's get right to the bottom line. Our 2026 assessment is pretty unequivocal. The active conflicts in the Middle East and Ukraine are, without a doubt, the most severe, high-impact threats to global stability right now. And the main consequence of that? Well, it's significant economic instability, which you can see here manifesting as those medium-level risks of market volatility and major supply chain disruption.
Here's the path we're going to take in this briefing. We'll start with that high-level assessment, then we're going to drill down into the geopolitical and economic drivers behind it. From there, we'll introduce a crucial analytical framework before we wrap up with a practical scenario planning exercise.
All right, Section 1, the 2026 Global Risk Assessment. We're going to start by unpacking the intelligence behind our assessment, really focusing on how these different threats are starting to converge and define the current landscape.
Now for Section 2, Imminent Geopolitical Threats. We're going to focus on the two primary conflict theaters. And it is absolutely critical to understand that these are not contained regional issues. Their shockwaves are being felt on a global scale.
So here you can see a direct, side-by-side comparison of the key risk vectors. In the Middle East, you've got two major factors creating instability: a growing diplomatic crisis between the US and Iran, and a new independence movement bubbling up in South Yemen. Meanwhile, over in Ukraine, significant Russian territorial gains and these relentless missile attacks on civilian centers like Kharkiv are really escalating the conflict into a dangerous new phase.
The key takeaway here is the interconnected nature of all these risks. The high-validity threats, things like oil supply disruption and escalating proxy conflicts in the Middle East, they have immediate global consequences. And in Eastern Europe, the constant threat to energy security and these big strategic questions about NATO's response continue to create massive uncertainty.
Okay, let's move to Section 3, Economic Stability. These geopolitical tensions, they aren't just abstract problems. They're creating some severe downstream effects on the global economy. The pressure is really mounting, and the data is showing some clear signals of distress.
This number right here is a perfect example of the volatility we're seeing. The FTSE 100 crossing 10,000 for the first time. On the surface, that might sound like great news, right? But it's happening against a backdrop of profound uncertainty. And that is a classic indicator of a potentially overheated market that might be bracing for a correction.
And here is another critical data point that's frankly pretty alarming. Memory prices have doubled since last October. That is a direct confirmation of severe fragility in the global technology supply chain, a vulnerability that affects nearly every single sector of the modern economy.
We're also tracking what looks like a fundamental shift in market power. BYD overtaking Tesla. Well, that's more than just a corporate headline. It signifies a major redistribution of dominance in a key future-facing industry. It's moving the center of gravity from the west to the east.
And all this economic pressure, it's now showing up at the corporate level. We're seeing distress in legacy retail, with huge players like Saks Fifth Avenue facing bankruptcy. And at the same time, state intervention is on the rise. Just look at the ordered divestment of a chip deal on national security grounds. It's further complicating an already tough global business environment.
So that brings us to Section 4, Strategic Analysis. To make sense of all these complex, interconnected threats, we have to move beyond just tracking headlines. What we really need is a structured, analytical approach.
And for that, we employ the TPSTRE framework. Its real power is in how it deconstructs the environment into these 7 key segments. This makes sure that we identify critical drivers of change that often get missed when you focus only on politics and economics, things like social trends or major ethical questions.
So when you apply the framework, you get this really clear, segmented view of the entire risk landscape. And notice the connections. See how the technological supply chain vulnerabilities link directly to the economic threat of component shortages? Or how political debates over executive power in the US can influence regulatory actions like the divestment orders we just saw. This framework makes those interconnections visible.
Exactly. This quote hits the nail on the head. This technological vulnerability isn't just a tech problem. It is the direct fuel for the economic instability and the tech component shortages we were just covering moments ago. The framework helps us trace these connections from cause to effect.
All right, Section 5, Scenario Planning. Now we're going to pivot from analysis to foresight.
We're going to apply these insights to a plausible future scenario, all to translate our intelligence into strategic action.
The what if, so what, now what model gives us a really clear, actionable path. We start with the what if, a plausible escalation, like the Middle East conflict spreading. Then, so what? What's the direct impact? Well, you'd see significant portfolio volatility and heightened risk in emerging markets. And this forces that crucial third step. Now what? What are we going to do about it?
And this brings us to the concrete defensive actions that are required. The logical responses to our scenario are crystal clear. You have to diversify geographic exposure, hedge against energy price shocks, intensify your monitoring of tech supply chains, and really rigorously assess the ESG implications of operating in or near these conflict zones. So, we conclude with this forward-looking question. Given this convergence of high-risk threats across both geopolitical and economic domains, the central challenge for 2026 is anticipating which of these interconnected pressures is going to give way first, triggering a cascade across the whole system. This should frame your ongoing intelligence and strategic priorities. That concludes this briefing.